Welcome everyone. I am David Allen Notco, and today we're going to talk about Don't Be Upstaged by a Bad Patch. And here to talk about it today is someone who will not upstage you or me, is Scott McQueenie. Take it away, Scott.
All right, thanks for the intro, my man Notco. Welcome everybody, good to see you today. Like Notco told us, we're going to be talking a little bit about not being upstaged by a bad patch. And you'll see exactly what I mean by that. Bear with me for just a moment. There we go. Okay, so our marketing team are the people that put out content for us. They're the ones who do fancy stuff like changing our logos to the new logo you see here on the screen and on my shirt, if you can see it. I don't know how far I'm in the frame here. So they put out slide deck materials for us. So we're having everything in the correct theme. And one of the slides available in our slide deck template here is inspirational quotes. This is mine. You really should use patch staging. And hopefully by the end of the session, you're going to go, right on, I get it. I'm going to start setting this up and start using it. Let's talk about it. We're going to start by talking about what is staged deployment. From there, we're going to move into a conversation about how you configure it and then deliver staged patches. The whole point of this is to find a bad patch, so we're going to make sure you know how to handle that as well. Got a business case here for you where Pete didn't have any testing in place and he got blindsided by a bad patch. Come on, it happens, right? Well, the result of this was he spent a lot of profit-killing hours in the form of his technicians fixing the affected machines, and then Pete himself having to assuage his client's ire at his seeming lack of preparedness. Don't be like Pete. How could he have avoided this costly lesson, you ask? I'm glad you asked. With patch staging, OBS. So we're going to start off talking about what is staged deployment. Patch staging, stage deployment is a feature that's built into Automate that allows you to apply patches to two pre-production stages, affording your practice the opportunity to identify problematic patches before they affect your entire agent base. We built this into Automate. We want you to have the ability to find them, test them before getting blindsided like Pete, all right? To start this off, we need to configure staged deployment. This begins with enabling staged delay times. In the Patch Manager, you have one particular policy that has set to be the require routine approval. So that is the policy that drives this entire process. With this checkbox checked, then these stage delay times appear within that approval policy. What you see here is requires routine approval is checked on this policy, and you can see in the list there's an asterisk on that name, which is our star approvals default policy. That is the one that is configured out of the box to require routine approval. When you have that checked, it puts the asterisk on that on that policy. It actually is also the policy that is going to drive the approvals icon. We're not talking so much about that in this particular conversation, but when you're in the Patch Manager, you've got your icons across the top. One of them is the approval screen, and it may have a red icon on there. What that means is you have patches that have not been decided, have not been acted on. And that is patches that have not been acted on this policy, whichever policy you have that requires routine approval. So with that checked, it of course is making this my asterisk, and it is tying it to all the approvals, and it's going to make this stage delay times field appear. That field for stage delay times is not going to be present in any of your other approval policies. It won't show until that's checked, but this gives me the opportunity to enable it on this policy, and it gives me the ability to start using staged deployment. You can see what I have here is I've got a couple different stages. They go through first test, and then they go through pilot stage, And from pilot, then they're going to go to production. So that's the entire point of having stage deployment configured. I want to catch them in one of these two stages so that I can identify them and hopefully rule out any problems and prevent them from getting to production. We're going to recommend that you choose your stages carefully. Test. We expect this to be in your test lab. Maybe you've got a bunch of virtuals that live in your test environment, and they can easily be rolled back to a restore point. I've always kind of envisioned what I'm going to do is grab one of my clients' production machines and make an image of it. And maybe they've got 10 different machines in their environment. Maybe I'll grab one image of all 10. And I just take that image, spin it up in my virtual environment. So that way I'm got something similar to what they experience in their environment, and I can test on their machines, but it's a virtual where I can simply, with a few clicks, restore it back if I run into problems. Those are machines in your environment over which you have total control, and you are going to run the patches through this test stage first. That is the sequence. Now, my pilot stage, the next stage, I kind of envision this being a little closer to your client's environment. Maybe when you land a client, you say, part of what I need to do is I need to have something in your environment that I can test. So I'm going to take one of your machines, actually your hardware, or the hardware that all of your machines are on, and it's got all the software that is installed with the rest of the machines in your office, including any sort of proprietary software. And it's going to live on your network. Nobody in your office is going to be allowed to use this one, but I need it for testing. Of course, I'm talking right now about testing patches, but of course, another way I would want to run some test stuff on there would be with scripting, installing some software, maybe monitoring, right? So maybe a pilot environment, a pilot machines in the pilot stage are going to be in your client's environment, something that you can test on, that's on their network. So it's much closer to their production machines without actually having any risk associated with it. So when I set the checkbox on that policy to require routine approval and I enable stage delay times, this is going to give me the opportunity to configure how long do I want this delay to last. Patch stages are advanced nightly by a scheduled process that determines the approved stage based on the date when the patch approval was changed. And that's really what's driving this. On our built-in star approvals default policy, there are some automatic approvals. And we often talk about perhaps you want to set some automatic approvals based on certain categories or severities or types of patches or CVSS score. So what's driving the patch stages and the progression from test to pilot to production is the approval date. So if I've got a patch policy that is set to automatically approve, and it's perhaps the policy that I've configured for requires routine approval, so my star approvals default policy, I've got it configured to automatically approve patches of these different varieties. Well, Automate gets made aware of patches based on patch inventory. So maybe a patch comes onto our radar, or patch inventory gets sent to Automate. Oh, here's one I haven't seen before. My policy has been configured on the star approvals default policy to automatically approve this particular one based on its severity. So then the approval happens with this nightly cycle that we're talking about here. When that approval happens, that marks the date, instructs the counter for it to move from the test stage to pilot and so on. Only approval statuses of approve and remove are going to trigger this approval status, or are going to trigger the advancement from one stage to the next. You want to make sure you've allowed enough time to evaluate the patch results between stages. I think a long time ago, I might have a memory of, it came with a setting stage of being only 2 days for the delay time, or maybe that's just something we set up when some of my colleagues and I were talking about it. Well, that's certainly not very much time, right? And that's got a couple of problems. First of all, if no approvals take place during that period of time, Well, there aren't any advancements there. So like a patch gets approved and then it hasn't been enough time for you to test it and catch it. So I'm giving in this example, the screenshot here, I'm giving an example of a week. That way the patch gets approved and now I have given myself time to find out what the results were and catch it before it advances to the next stage. That's a really key component there. Now, my man Natko and I were actually talking about this yesterday when we kind of ran through this presentation. And you can see in the list, I can go as far as 3 weeks. Well, I don't necessarily want to do that, right? If I've got a patch that's been pushed out by Microsoft because it's protecting some sort of vulnerability that had been discovered, okay, we've addressed this. Well, I don't want machines sitting out there for 3 weeks and then another 3 weeks before they get this patch. So you want to find that sweet spot. I just picked a week in here because that gives me enough time to have them approved, get them installed, and check the results. The way this is going to happen for me to determine which machines are going to be in which stage is within the patch manager. In the patch manager, I navigate to the patch manager devices screen, and we click on the desired computer from the devices list. With that agent selected in the list, I click set stage up at the top of the screen, and then it's going to give me the opportunity in a dialog box to select the stage in which I want it to reside. You can see what that looks like here. So I've got the devices icon selected at the top of the screen. Now I have one of my agents selected from the list view. I clicked on set stage and I get this dialog box. Here you can see that I'm putting it in the test stage. Of course, I could use it to put it in pilot, and if for some reason I have an agent that I've been using in a test bed, one of these 2 stages, but I need to repurpose that machine. Maybe I need to have it give it to an end user at my client site because they had an unexpected rash of hiring and they didn't have enough new machines, so I have to give up my test machine temporarily. This is where I could come back and say, okay, I'm going to take that agent now and move it to the production stage. That's really the only time I would expect you would need to move it to the production stage, because by default, they're always in the production stage. So when I'm looking at setting the stage here, this is what I've done. This is where I've told the agent, you are now in this particular stage. Of course, you're going to want agents some in test and some in pilot. What we're going to do next is we're going to build a framework. So we talked about that policy, whichever one is checked for requires routine approval. Out of the box, that's the star approvals default policy. That is the one that's going to drive this for our stage delay. And what that is doing is it's driving the approvals, just like we talked about. A patch got detected through patch inventory on Tuesday. Some computer sent in their patch inventory on Tuesday. Automate had never seen that patch before. The nightly job runs Tuesday night. And now it's going to look at the approval policy and say, oh, based on that severity, this one is set to automatically approve. It's going to approve it. That starts the counter. So it starts my counter for getting it to move through the test and pilot stages. But I'm going to need a Microsoft update policy to install patches during those windows. What the stage delay does, what turning on those stages does, is it handles the approvals. It is moving the approvals through the stage times, but it is not handling the installing of patches. What handles installing of patches is the Microsoft update policies. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a framework here to ensure that I have Microsoft update policies that can be delivered to the agents that I have put in the respective stages. Stage delay handles the approvals for me. Now, this framework I'm building here is going to ensure that during those time windows, I have a Microsoft update policy that's going to install the one that I approved or that got automatically approved, as a matter of fact. The way I chose to solve for this was by creating an additional field. Additional fields in Automate, and we often refer to them as extra data fields. And this is just a field that you can add to Automate, and it allows you to build a whole lot of customization and automation around it. It could be something as simple as an informational field, just something that I want to be able to put a note on an agent. That might be why I put the field. EDFs have a lot of uses. In this particular case, I'm creating an extra data field, and you can see I cleverly named it Staged Deployment Test. In my environment, I happen to have already had a tab called Custom Patching. So I'm making an EDF for the computer screen. You can see we have EDFs that can be made for locations, clients, network devices, etc. But I'm driving this by computer. I went to the computer in Patch Manager and I put it in the respective stage. So now I'm going to go to that computer and I'm going to put an extra data field on there that I'm going to check to say, I want this one to be one of my test stage computers. So I built an EDF, I made it a computer EDF. I happen to have already had a custom patching tab in my environment. You could create your own tab there, or you can let it just go to the info tab if you want to by default. This is going to involve me creating these EDFs and then taking those agents that I have put in the respective stages in the patch manager, like I was just showing you, when you find it in devices and set the stage. Now I need to take that agent, go find it and open it up and check this EDF as well. So my EDF looks like this. This is just where I open up the computer management screen. I've gone to extra data fields, I've selected custom patching, and you can see I've got my checkbox down at the bottom for stage deployment. That's the EDF I created to put machines in that stage. And I'll give you some feedback actually that I got from one of our coworkers. I was discussing this, kind of vetting the content with our support lead who handles patching. This gentleman's got just a tremendous amount of experience working with Automate patching, and I wanted to pick his brain, make sure he agreed with the things I was going to talk to you folks about. And he said, if you're fancy, you can script this. Now, I created an EDF, I found the computer and opened the computer management screen and I checked the box. Not a lot of work. If you're wanting to stage 50 or 100 machines, yeah, I could see that being a bit of work. So his suggestion was, you can script this. The information about what stage it's in is available in the database. I want to say he told me it was called computers.staging, and there are values for test, pilot, and production. So you could script make an Automate script to check what stage it's in the database, and then select the EDF to match it accordingly. Then this is a script that could just run on a recurring basis, and maybe nightly, right? Run to check the stage, check the desired EDF. That is cool. And if you wanted to do that, that's a little bit more advanced automation than what I dreamed up here. I certainly didn't flesh out that script and I haven't tested it, but since it's something that he mentioned, I thought I would share it with you guys. If you guys are like, oh, doing that would be much cooler than having to manually check the box, and you might look into the development of a script like that. The reason I created an EDF is because I want to get the agents in groups. So I'm going to create a patching group, and I'm going to be applying a Microsoft update policy to control when the patches get installed. The way we deliver Microsoft update policies is through a group in the patch manager. Here's a screenshot from the group screen. I clicked on the little people icon and chose create new group. In here, I'm giving a name. I chose to make the name match the EDF and match the name of the stage. I was trying to make it logical and not confuse myself, which is trickier than you would think. I'm easily confused. So I said, let me give it a name I can work with, and look at what my auto join is doing there. I'm just looking for that particular EDF, custom patching, and the EDF is stage deployment test where it is true. This is just finding machines that match the criteria that I just created. I created the EDF, opened the computer management screen, checked the EDF. Now I'm taking the group that I've just created in Patch Manager, and I'm saying, who do I want in this group? I want the agents that are checked with this EDF in that group. Now I have built the framework. Having built the framework, I'm ready to finally start delivering these staged patches. The test and patching pilot groups are going to need to have a Microsoft update policy that ensures the patches will get installed during the stage windows. This is really the main reason I'm talking to you guys about this today. When you enable stage delay times, that is going to automatically approve them for you, and it's going to advance those approvals based on the approval date, and it's going to move them based on the delay windows you set. That was where I gave 1 week per stage in my example. But it doesn't install the patches for you. So I needed a mechanism to deliver the patches during those stage time windows. This is what I built out. Create the EDF, check it on the computers. Make sure I check the EDF on the computer that matches the stage it's in. The examples I've shown so far were tests. I have duplicate for all that for pilot. I have a stage deployment, pilot checkbox, and group. So now I'm going to ensure that these machines are going to install during those windows. Because I've already created a group now in the Patch Manager, now I have a group is a vehicle to deliver my Microsoft update policy. These are test machines. My test machines in the test stage and my pilot machines in the test stage, they're all test machines. They're not somebody's actual computer. Unless it's that one guy who always steals your lunch from the work cafeteria, the work break room. We know that guy. Maybe we choose to accidentally put their machine in the patch staging group. Did that happen? My bad. So I don't care if these test machines are getting rebooted during the day. So I'm saying, let's configure stage deployment. Let's make sure they're installing every weekday as soon as they're approved. This is what it looks like for the one I created. I cleverly named my Microsoft update policy stage deployment. And you can see what I did. In the day I chose custom. For the occurrence, I checked all the boxes there because I want every one of those days to get checked. My example, I'm installing patches on weekdays starting at 8 a.m. for a period of 3 hours. So now the patch gets approved because patch inventory was sent. The nightly job ran to apply automatic approvals on my star approvals default policy, or whichever one you have that is configured to require routine approval. I have that policy set up to automatically approve based on a certain severity. A patch of that severity gets detected, so the nightly job approves that patch. So now if that happened on Tuesday night, we run the routine on Tuesday night, it gets approved. Now on this particular Microsoft update policy, you can see Wednesday is checked, and it's all the Wednesdays that are ever going to happen, and we're installing from 8 a.m. for a period of 3 hours. So now the patch is going to get installed. This gives me the opportunity to have a look and see if there was a problem related to that patch because it got installed as soon as I could make it happen after it was approved. Now I've got a week from that approval date, so it installs the next day. That gives me my time to investigate and fix and prevent it from affecting other machines if I find out that there's a problem. You can see over on the right-hand side, I did enable daytime patching because these are test machines. I don't care if they get rebooted. I just need them to install all these patches as soon as they're detected. After I've created my Microsoft update policy, don't forget those groups that I created are the delivery mechanism for that Microsoft update policy. I created my stage deployment groups. I moved them lower in my list because don't forget, when you're looking at the list of groups in the Patch Manager, the groups that are lower in the list have higher priority. These are very important. I want for these machines in these deployment stages, I want them to get installed, and I want them to use the settings I'm setting for stage deployment. They might be in some other groups. I want these to take precedence, so I've moved them lower in the group, and I'm delivering this Microsoft update policy that I called stage deployment. Now I'm ensuring that they're going to get delivered. So I've enabled the stage deployment. I've built my framework with the EDF and setting it on the computer. I've created my groups and populated them with the machines that were checked. I've created and Microsoft Update policy to ensure that they're going to get installed, and I'm sending it on my groups. I've delivered my patches, we're ready to rock. Now I need to know, what am I going to do if I find a bad one? I mean, that's the entire point of this, is to check on the machines that install these patches after they installed them so that I don't get blindsided. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I need to remember to check. I actually made this reminder in my Outlook, and it's bothering me currently every Monday. But of course, every Monday might not be very effective, right? Because think about the scenario I just described. Patch comes in Tuesday, gets approved Tuesday night, gets installed Wednesday. I don't want to wait until next Monday to check. So you need to create some mechanism that's going to work for you to go check on these things. It shouldn't be that time consuming to check if you're doing it pretty frequently, but you certainly need to check as many times as you can afford to during your stages. In a perfect world, I would tell you to check every day. If you can't do that, that's cool. But if patches got installed on Tuesday morning and you didn't have a chance to check until Friday, you're not giving yourself a lot of time to intercede before those approvals advance to the next stage. So the coordination there really needs to be linked up between when they're getting installed and how often you're checking. I just made this reminder in Outlook to remind me to check. Whatever is going to work for you to ping you to go, oh yeah, let me just go check real quick and see if there are any problems. If there aren't any problems, you're not spending any time. But if there are, you'll be thankful you checked and caught it as soon as possible. If the problem patch got installed on Tuesday, so much better for you to be finding it on Wednesday than to be finding it too late, right? So make something as your reminder to tell yourself to go check there. Some of the ways we're going to check are going to be in the patch manager on the dashboard. So you go to the dashboard, navigate to that by going to patch manager and clicking on the dashboard. And we've got some donut charts that live right in the middle, sort of on the deployment section. In the middle of the donut, we're going to see a percentage. That percentage is the percentage of approved patches that have been installed. Also, next to each donut, and we have one donut for each stage, we've got a donut for test, pilot, and production. The percentage in the middle, how many of the approved patches have been installed. Also, we have numbers showing the count of installed, the count of not attempted, and the count of failed. I want to take a second to talk about that not attempted as well. If you configure this the way I've kind of been talking about, you shouldn't see not attempted. Don't forget, what the approvals are driving, what the stage delays are doing is driving approvals. But if I don't have a Microsoft Update policy that's installing it shortly after the approval, then it's not attempting the install and I don't know what happened. That's what not attempted means. Approved, but I have not yet attempted installation. Well, that's bad. That's why I configured that Microsoft Update policy to install every day of the week between 8 a.m. and 11 a.m. Every day in case it got approved. This one got approved Tuesday night, we try and install Wednesday. I had another one that got approved Thursday night. I want to try to install Friday. I don't want patches then not attempted because that's cutting down my window of potential discovery. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to look, do I have some in not attempted? Do I have some in failed? Do I need to go take a look? So this is a quick place to glance at the stages of my deployment for test and pilot. Another place I'm going to look here in the patch manager. In the patch manager, I go to the devices screen, and I'm going to select global from the clients list. Then I'm going to filter on the desired stage. So now I'm looking at devices, I'm looking at all devices, and I'm filtering to the stage I want to look at. I'll start with test. In that list view on my devices screen in the patch manager, I have some device flags. They are dynamic. They only show if they're active. This is where I'm going to look in the device flags and look to see if any of these agents is offline. Because really, that is a view that I have within the patch manager to see that perhaps the machine blue screened, right? Ooh, patches got installed on Wednesday morning. All of a sudden, I come in here and look Wednesday afternoon, Thursday morning. Whoa, that machine's offline. It's not supposed to be offline. What happened? Maybe it blue screened. that's a key that I need to go look. So this is where I filtered that view. I'm currently in my patch manager in the devices screen. Up in the top left under clients, I'm selecting global. Now down here in the lower left, I've selected my stage with the patch stage of test. I'm going to look at that one first. And here's the device flags I was talking about over there. If I had a machine that was offline, I'm going to see the offline flag here. That alerts me, oopsie, maybe I need to go take a look. So I found the bad boy. Now what do I do? The point here is to go find the patches that have been detected as bad and change their approval status. They got approved. It caused a problem, so I'm going to go block them from getting installed on the next stage by changing their approval status. Sorry about that. Oh, wow, that's not ideal. Okay, so give me just a quick second, if you will. I need to see if I can fix this one little problem on that slide. Okay, so we're going to navigate to the approval screen in my patch manager. I'm going to find the bad patch. So I'm selecting whichever patch is delivering this. This is the one that is set for requires routine approval. This is the one that for out of the box is the star approvals default policy. With that selected in the list, then I'm going to go find the stage and change it to, the argument could be made that you want to change it to deny. And I'll explain why in just a moment, maybe. Okay, so I'm going to change that stage. I'm going to change that approval because it's a patch that I detected to be a problem. It's detected on the patch approval policy that is delivering these for us out of the box, star approvals default, whichever one you have set to require routine approval. I select that policy, I find the bad patch, and then down there in the list with that one selected, you can see I have the ability to change that approval status. I'm going to change it to deny. The argument here is in the off chance that we have some configuration that's not ideal and there's some other patch policy, some other approval policy that is being delivered to this device, I don't want to just change the approval status to ignore, because if it's ignored on this policy, but it's approved on another policy, it's still going to get installed. So I don't want that to happen. The surest bet for me is going to be find the patch on this policy and deny it. Now, sometimes Microsoft will re-release a patch in a couple days. If they do, I can go back and approve it again, right? But just in case there's any confusion about our approval statuses in which take hierarchy, I just wanted to reiterate this to you guys. I talked to you in the group screen where I took my two groups for stage deployment, test, and pilot and moved them to the lower part of the list, and that's where I applied the Microsoft update policy. Lower in the list controls which update policy they're going to get and which reboot policy. But what controls which approval status is going to win is this: deny, remove, approve, ignore, not set. Drain. Think of this drain acronym to answer the question, which one of these is the one that's going to win out? That's why I'm choosing deny here. When I need to go block this bad patch, deny trumps every other setting. You can see if I happen to have ignore, I choose ignore instead of deny, and some other policy has approve, then that other policy is going to approve it. Choosing deny is going to ensure that I don't have this problem. Something happens and I need to go change it, cool. I'll follow these exact steps and set it back to approve, because Microsoft re-released the same, a new version of that patch with the same number, and we're good. But otherwise, me setting this one to deny when I catch it in test prevents it from making it to pilot, or I didn't catch it until pilot, prevents it from making it to production. All right, Some key takeaways. Use patch staging. It's great. If you configure it like this, you're going to be able to catch the problems before they impact 250 or 2,500 or 25,000 machines. You're going to enable the staging on whatever policy is requiring routine approval, and you're going to build out your framework to get those agents in those groups. You saw the way I built out the framework. You don't have to do it that way. You just need something in there to deliver those patches during those stage delay windows on which they're being approved. And you're going to catch those bad patches. Catch them before they reach production, save yourself a headache. You're going to look like a hero because, oh, look, I didn't have to burn all these hours. I didn't cause all these machines to go down because they got a bad patch that I should have caught for my clients who are paying me to manage their patching. This is going to be your solution. If you can deploy this and remind yourself to go check. If you don't find anything, that go check period was what? 5 minutes, right? I went to 2 screens in the patch manager. If I do, what a time saver. I go deny it on the policy, and I'm not putting out fires and trying to fix all these machines. I'd like to share some additional resources with you. We've got some documentation. This will take you right to our documentation on the section that talks about patch stage. I'll leave this up here for a second if you guys want to try to whip out your phones. Just lots of different people like to consume our assets many different ways. I tend to be more of a person who would listen to me. I would rather have somebody explain it to me, but so many of our partners have the opposite experience and they'd rather go look at the documentation. Also, our documentation is great for the specs. You know, like, okay, I see these settings, but I don't know exactly what that setting means. Go look at our documentation and you'll find out. All right, y'all have any questions for me today?
Scotty, we've had a good number of questions during the presentation today. I have answered them, but I would like to go through them if you like.
Excellent. Let's
All
make it
right.
happen.
So the first one is, are you able to override or bypass test stage for a critical patch that needs to load immediately?
I can
And
see why you would want to ask that. What would you
and
say
the
is the
answer
answer,
actually,
Nacho?
the answer is yes, you can. You have to go to the approval screen where you view your patches, and in the set patches section at the bottom, there is a column all the way to the right that actually shows the patch stage, and you can organize that patch stage, starting with test, then going to pilot, or I think it goes pilot test, however it organizes it. You click on the patch stage where it says pilot or test, and then it gives you the option to move it to the next stage. So if it's in test, you can put it in pilot, and if it's in pilot, you can put it in production. Or if it's in test, you can move it straight into production if it's a 0-day patch situation.
So would this be where we're looking at this gimmick?
Yes, and you see the column on the right that says stage right there. If you click on that, I think we do have some pilot patches in there. If you just click where it says stage, and it should bring those to the top or to the bottom. You might have to scroll all the way to the opposite end now. There you go. And then you can click at the top, or like, yeah, you click on pilot, it'll bring up a little window, and now you can move it to production. So if it's a 0-day patch that you need to get out right away, that's how you do it.
Excellent.
The next one was, and it pertained to what you were talking about on the screen earlier, saying you can use the arrows to move groups in the order of the list. It's referring to that groups list and how you made the patch staging groups, or that test group and the pilot group there. And as you already said, I just wanted to have them keep in mind that when you change the group order like that, it is going to change the priority of the update and reboot policies. However, it does not affect the priority of the approval policy when you do this.
Absolutely.
We had a couple questions on, is this recorded? It absolutely is. When this recording is done and when this webinar is done, It will be on the university in a somewhat short time, and then you can watch it in the video library under the Automate and Webinar section.
Absolutely.
There was one here that says, I see you're using the Patch Manager module in ConnectWise Automate desktop apps. Should we use that one, or can we use the web graphic user interface or the web GUI? You might be able to. We made this, we developed this using the desktop app because we know all the features are there. They are still currently working on the web user interface, so you may be able to move those groups up and down in there. Depends on what they have added in there. You can try it either way. If you are able to do that in the web interface, then fantastic. It's not going to hurt anything. You'll get the same result. But if you can't, then definitely use the desktop app. And this is a question I wasn't too sure on. So I'm hoping you may have an answer. I tried to reach out to our guy that is our patching guru over there in support, but he's not available at the moment. It was will denied, then approved patches go back through the staging from the beginning. So for example, if they had a patch that was in test, they saw that it caused a problem and they denied it. Now that they've fixed the problem, or maybe the patch, whatever was done, was able to rectify that patch, and then they go ahead and approve it, does it start over in the staging process or not?
Okay, I don't know the answer to that either, but with our newfound information about being able to change the stage, perhaps it was caught right at the end of the test stage, and by the time you're able to go reapprove it, it's now moved to pilot. You will see that, of course, from that approval screen we were just on when we look at the column. So that would be the first place I would look. I don't know if it's going to reset the stage time. The dogs love lightning and thunder. Sorry about that. So I don't know if that would reset the date, but that would be where I would check. I found out it was a problem right near the end of test. I denied it. Now, by the time it's been re-released and I'm ready to reapprove it, it's in pilot maybe. So then I would go look at that approval screen of that column that we're just looking at. Oh, yes, it is in pilot. I'm going to go set it back to test. I'm not positive if it does it automatically for you, so I would manually force it that way.
All right. So I asked that for that question, if Adam could email into education@connectwise.com, and I can go ahead and let them know to shoot that. It'll become a ticket, and shoot that ticket over to me, and I'll gladly look it further into that and can get a solid answer once the patching guy becomes available, and I can check with him to be sure. I'm sure he's probably had this question at some point.
Yeah, I would think.
And that's it for the list of questions I have here. If anyone has any more questions, feel free to get them in now or forever hold your peace. Or if you think of a question later that you're thinking, man, I really could have asked Scotty a question, I wasn't really sure about it, go ahead and email us, education@connectwise.com. It will go to all of our training SMEs, and so you will have a team of SMEs to take a look at that question for you.
And if you send an email like that, if you reference the, don't be upstaged by a bad patch webinar, that'll help us find the answer, or, know where to tie it to and make sure we're getting you the right answer.
We just had another question come in. The question is, should I set up my groups or stages first? Trying to see what I should do with the EDFs.
I set up the EDF and built my group, and then I checked the agents. I had put them in the stages first. So I went to the patch manager devices screen and set the stages there. So that way I knew which computers I wanted to go to check the EDF. The sequence doesn't matter, but just as long as you're remembering to check the appropriate EDF for the appropriate stages you had selected.
All right, so to add to that, I would say your method would be setting the stage first, getting your groups set, and then setting the EDFs for those groups, or for the search for those groups to get those agents within those groups.
I actually did it in the order from the presentation because I can't build the group
Okay.
until I have the EDF to auto join them. So I
Right.
built the EDF so that I could check it, so that I could build a group and build the auto join.
All right.
What else we got?
Right now, I'm not seeing any other questions pop in at the moment. Oh, I spoke too soon.
All right.
Sorry, joined late. Did you have the third part in this webinar, or will there be another webinar future to review?
Is that asking about staging for third-party patching, maybe?
Yes, it looks like that is the third-party patching.
We don't. Third-party patching does not get put through stages. There is no stage delay times that are applied to third-party patches.
Okay.
Any other questions out there, Natko?
Sorry, it's a little difficult for me to talk when the microphone is muted. No, I don't have any other questions pertaining to the criteria of this presentation at this time.
All right, everybody, as always, we appreciate you so much attending this. Please shoot any questions that you have. If you think of them after this, like we said, shoot them over to us and reference this webinar. And we look forward to seeing you guys all at the next one.
All right, thank you everybody, and have a good one.
Thanks, everybody.